From the battlefield to Civvy Street, from checking for roadside bombs to checking boxes in an online takeout order. The transition from war to civilian life can be bumpy. Joining us now to share their experiences with this transition, in Kingston, Ontario via Skype, Dean Milner. He's Major General in the Canadian Forces, currently the commander of the 1st Canadian Division. And back here in our studios, David Mack, former British Army captain who served in Iraq, Afghanistan and Northern Ireland. Julian Chapman, former Canadian Forces Brigadier General and board member with Wounded Warriors Canada. Ektidar Menachery, former Major in the Canadian Forces who served 3 tours in Afghanistan and 1 in Bosnia. And Royal Military College professor Stéphanie Bélanger, Associate Director at the Canadian Institute for Military and Veteran Health Research. And it's great to have you 4 here in our studio. And General, happy to have you on the line via Skype in Kingston. I want to sort of, if I can, just get to meet all of you as we go around the horn here, as it were, and then we'll get into this topic more deeply. But David, let's start with you. You're from where?
I grew up in Oshawa, actually.
Grew up in Oshawa. Okay, how did you end up a captain in the British Armed Forces?
That's a really long story, but in short, I wound up in the UK back in 2000 and was at university there. And while studying, I also joined the reserves in the summer of 2001. Following September 11, became quite obvious that decision to join the reserves probably had a longer tail than initially intended.
And why is it that you ended up serving in the British service instead of the Canadian Forces?
That's a great question, and there's lots of different reasons for that too. I mean, part of the fact that I was already part of the reserves group in the UK. Also, I was already in the system, and the British were already deploying, say, to Iraq and Afghanistan. And quite frankly, the Canadians were much more discerning than the British. So.
The Canadians were more discerning. Did any of your British colleagues say things like, "Hey, buddy, you're on the wrong side of the Atlantic. Shouldn't you be going home?"
There's plenty of chat about that type of thing, but that's all part of the game too. You give it as best as you get. So there is that sort of definitely that bit of fun, that camaraderie that comes with being in that environment, but it's something that's too painful.
So 9/11 happens, and how long after that do you find yourself deployed?
I actually went to Northern Ireland initially, to Belfast in 2005, and then wound up in Iraq in 2007, and then Afghanistan in 2009.
This may sound like a silly question, but did you actually want to go to all those places?
I actually did volunteer for all of them, yes.
You did?
Yeah.
Why?
That's a great question. It was very much, we were in a situation, we were in I guess 2003, 2004, 2005, the world was changing. And I definitely want to be part of all that. And I think there's, as a young man who was looking for adventure, the opportunity was there. But also, I think more importantly, the idea that there's something beyond, just taking care of myself. There was a notion of, say, doing something bigger than myself and being involved with something beyond myself. The notion of service was very, very, very powerful, and something that I want to be involved with.
Okay, David, thank you.
Thank you.
Good to get to know you. Shall we continue, Ektidar?
Certainly.
All right, where are you from?
I'm from Edmonton.
You're from Edmonton, okay. How many years in the CF?
So 17 years.
17 years, yeah. Doing what different roles all the way through?
So I was an armor officer by trade. My regiment's Lord Strathcona's Horse, based out of Edmonton. And I did a mixture of both reconnaissance and heavy armor, so tanks, etc. I also spent 2 years as an instructor out in New Brunswick.
3 tours in Afghanistan?
Yes.
1 in Bosnia?
Yes.
How long's a tour?
Depends on the tour. So my one to Bosnia was 6, and then from there...
6 months?
6 months, yes. And then from there it was 7 months for my first tour to Afghanistan, 8 months for the second, and a year for the third.
During your tours of Afghanistan, all right, take me to the time when you were captain of the tank squadron.
Okay.
What kind of job did you have to do in that?
So when I went in 2008, we were doing a lot of clearance style operations and a lot of what's called the quick reaction force. So if you're here at home in Canada and you get in trouble, you generally call 911 and then you get police, fire, ambulance, whatever you require. In Kandahar, when soldiers are in a gunfight or in a battle and they get into trouble, we were their 911 call. And so we would come to help them out with whatever it was. And
who are you going to call? You call Ektidar.
Exactly.
Gotcha. Okay. Lots of firefights?
More than I care to remember, yeah. Yeah, there was quite a few firefights. The summer of 2008 was fairly violent, fairly active. So
lose any men or women?
Unfortunately, yes. More wounded than dead, but I think we took a I think our battle group took 19 dead over that course.
And you knew them all, of course.
I knew the majority of them, yes.
Knew the majority of them.
Yeah.
You recently left the military.
3 weeks ago.
What are you doing now?
I'm now at Port Airlines.
Doing what?
I'm one of the directors of operations.
So you're down at the Billy Bishop Airport?
I am, yeah.
Okay, let's continue. Thank you for that, Eqtidar. General Milner, let's do you out of town in Kingston, Ontario. What year did you join the CF?
Just a few years ago, Steve. Just a couple years ago. Actually, 1980.
Oh, that's just a couple of years ago. Yes, I get it. Okay. The 1980s. And why did you join?
Similar to the other guys, David and Eqtidar, the adventure. I wanted to get out and see the world. I liked the position, where I know there were going to be challenges. Serving my country, and actually my father was in the Canadian Force, so I had a good opportunity to see a lot what he had done throughout his career.
And where are you from originally?
Well, I was born in Winnipeg, but he was on. My dad was on the move a lot, so fortunately we only spent about 6 months there. But I am a Blue Bomber and a Jets fan.
Well, nobody's perfect, General. That's okay. Did you ever swap war stories with your dad and hear his stories? And might that have been part of the reason that got you interested?
Quite often. As a matter of fact, I saw him in the field a number of times. Back during his time frame, it was a lot more exercises. He did participate in Cyprus. He was deployed to Cyprus a number of times, but absolutely swapped stories constantly.
Now, I know we've got a brigadier general here in Toronto, and you're a major general. What's the difference?
Not a lot. One Maple Leaf. As a matter of fact, a little bit more experience, I guess, but not a lot of difference. We both, you command troops, you lead in the Canadian Forces, and so really not a big difference.
Yeah, Julian Chapman was telling me the same thing. No, I'm kidding. He hasn't said that yet at all. But let's get into it here with you, Julian Chapman. Do you want to answer that last question first? What's the difference between a brigadier general, which you are, and a major general, which he is?
Well, I think actually the bigger difference is as a matter of experience, and unfortunately the music stopped for me, and there were no chairs left, so I had to go. So
now, what does that mean?
Hopefully, Dean has a longer run. Well, there are only a few positions, so as we rotate people through, the time came for me to actually go because there were no more chairs left. So I like to refer to it as musical chairs.
Musical
I think
chairs.
Most people get that.
Got it. Where are you from originally?
I guess the best way to describe that is Brock Township, so near a little town called Sunderland, northeast of Toronto. So,
Okay.
So out in the country.
A military family or no?
Not in the slightest, actually. I think the best way to describe it is my father was probably closest to a pacifist. So this was my teenage rebellious years. So I chose to join the military.
And what did he think when you did that?
I think he supported me fully. He absolutely supported me fully. But it was I wanted to do something different than what he had chosen as his path. So.
And did you get in as General Milner did just a couple of years ago?
Just a couple of years ago, actually. I guess we joined at the same time. So
Back in the 1980s.
Yeah, 1980.
1980 for you.
Yeah.
So how many years all told?
34 years.
34. That's a pretty good run.
So and I just retired like Eqtidar about a month ago. So I'm just getting used to that.
You are getting
routine.
used to dressing like a civilian.
Well, I'm a reservist. So I'm a classic reservist, and I think in most cases across the country, most people don't understand the nature of the reserve force versus the regular force. So they see someone in uniform, they naturally assume that they're part of the regular force. Reservists are part-time. So my career has been a reserve career throughout those 34 years. So
Meaning you had other work at the same time?
I had other work, and in some cases I would take contracts for a period of time. I did about 5 years of full-time service, but most cases it was part-time.
Okay, Professor, let's get into this. You've heard varying stories here about why people get into the military. Does this jibe with what you have found in your research as well?
Yes, it does actually. Most people will enroll because they want to make a difference, because they want to belong to something bigger than them. So it's nice to hear all these stories because I think all these gentlemen had that drive of, what can I do to make that difference? Typically people enroll, and this is research that I don't necessarily do, but that I will present at my forum, that other researchers will be presenting. And typically people who enroll will have, good coping skills. They'll have bigger resilience, higher tendency to want to do something risky. They like adventure. They like to travel around the world. They like to see things, and it makes a very dynamic group. So in a show like the one you're doing on how do they transition to civilian life, most of them it's a real success because they find other places in the society where they can find again that dynamism and create life.
Well, that's what I wanted to pick up on because it seems, I don't want to push this comparison too far because there's no comparison, but I have heard politicians say things like, being at the center of the action is such a stressful, high impact, by the standards of politics, exciting life, and that when they're out of politics, there's just nothing that comes close. You don't get the camaraderie, you don't get the sense of purpose that you do when you're in the cauldron. Is it the same thing for military life as well? Once they're out, it's just never the same?
The one sentence that I've heard the most, so reporting their words, not speaking for them, but what I heard the most was, this is where my heart was beating the most. This is where I lived the most. This is where I felt I made a real difference. Doesn't mean that their heart doesn't beat anymore. Now they found ways to make it beat again, to live life fully where they are at that moment. And this is what makes them so, I would say, different from so many other people. They have that drive in them.
Let's talk about that transition some more. And to that end, David, I'll get you to comment on this first. This is from the New York Times from a year ago. I'm just going to read this and then we'll chat about it. Small things kill in combat. This truism is as old as war itself, but it proved especially correct in Iraq and Afghanistan, where a new pile of dirt or the glint off a wire in the desert sun could be the sole indication that a bomb lay beneath your feet. So, at its heart, military training, from the first day of boot camp to the final pre-deployment war game, has always really been about paying attention to details. The military knows how to turn on hypervigilance. The question is how to turn it off. Let's talk about this, shall we?
Yeah, my question back is, why would you want to turn it off? And by that I mean, I walk around downtown Toronto and I see zombies wherever I go. I see people that are not motivated by their jobs. I'm in business now, I'm in a startup, and any move we could make could actually destroy us. We are in a situation where we have to be on top of our game. So why would I want to turn that off? I want to be, I have to be in that sort of high performance team. I'm already in there. It's like, it takes somebody from, a great example of politicians, but it takes somebody from the NHL or the NBA or whatever, somebody who's played at the top tier of their sport, right? They are at the prime, they're in a high performance team. And somebody leaves from the military, it's not that they've gone down to the B leagues, it's more like they bring that with them. So maybe the rest of the team should follow them. So why would I want to turn off that sort of that nature?
Okay, I'll play along here. Because you can't sell insurance the way you fight for the Stanley Cup. It just doesn't, you just can't. It's just not the same. The stakes aren't as high. The intensity's not the same. The camaraderie, the teamwork, all of that stuff isn't the same. So how can you really replicate what you experienced in the field, even admittedly with an exciting new startup?
Yeah, fair one. And I was saying this to General earlier today. I'm now in a high performance team. I know that right now, that I've now kind of joined a group. So I think it's more of a question of, fine, you're quite right. You can't sell insurance at the same sort of intensity as you would be playing for the Stanley Cup. Nonetheless, in my job in the military, I saw myself very much in a vocational role. My life was my job, was my identity. And so I think that sort of approach can be applied within the business community, so that such the point where I am now very much in tune. I'm not going to a 9-to-5 job and just showing up, getting my bills paid, and leaving. I am, whether I'm on the clock the entire time or whether it's part of my life, that sort of vocational calling to my people. And the reality is too, is that a lot of the experiences that I learned, I studied theology at university. So one of the points I didn't raise earlier was, I understood my role very much as a shepherd, and to take care of my people. And this is a skill, an attribute that is highly valuable in the business world. And so everything I do is very much in service to the people at my startup. And that is part of that hypervigilance and intensity of work.
A shepherd is an interesting metaphor because obviously you've got to make sure you don't lose any sheep along the way, right? Got it. Ektadar, how about you in terms of turning off that hypervigilance? Do you want to now that you're not in the service anymore?
I think to David's point, it's a very valuable skill, but what David's been able to do is adapt that skill so that it's contextually appropriate for his business. It's that hypervigilance. I mean, the quote is absolutely correct. I remember this one time we found a bomb, but it had been so well buried and so well concealed, and the detonation cord for it had run 100 meters, but that cord had been buried for the entire 100 meters, and it was just because we were approaching it around dawn where the light was coming from behind it. If it had been a few hours earlier, it would have masked completely, and we were able to find it, thankfully. So that hypervigilance was very, very important for the battlefield. Paying that attention to detail when you're in business or in the corporate world is very, very valuable as well. But you just need to adapt it so that it's contextually appropriate. So you don't have your back up when you walk into a room and perceive other people as a threat or other drivers on the road as a threat. It becomes taking it and adapting it to the circumstances that prevail.
But that's what I mean. How tough is it to do that adapting? Because let's face it, if you're in theater and you're not hypervigilant, you can die. Mm-hmm. It's unlikely that if you make a similar mistake at Billy Bishop Airport that you're going to die.
It's true, but it takes time. It takes time to sort of wean off and come down. So when I came home in 2008, for example, we spent some time in Cyprus to what they call decompression, and you transition back into a somewhat normal environment over a course of 4 or 5 days, and then you come home, and then you're sort of off back home. In 2012, when I came home, I skipped Cyprus altogether. I didn't do any decompression. I literally got on an airplane at Kandahar Airfield, changed airplanes at Dubai International Airport, and landed in Toronto. And so my transition was watching a few movies on the back of a seat back screen, and it took me months to sort of slow down and stop paying so much attention to everybody that was walking around me.
Do I assume it's easier for a reservist because you have to find that on-off switch more frequently in your civilian life?
I think so. I like to refer to reservists as kind of bipolar. So they have one side of their brain is focused on the military, and the other side is focused on business, education, whatever the case may be. But I think actually the point that both David and Ektadar have made is that there is a skill set, a critical skill set that is needed in business that is provided through that hypervigilance. And I think the flip side of that, and what I see, so my background is I'm a consultant, so I work with all sorts of different corporations, sectors, you name it. There is a real gap in the leadership that David was talking about, and also in the essence of the hypervigilance of really being on your game and ready to go. So a reservist can make that transition perhaps a little better. But I think what we feared the most as we prepared to send guys, and I use that in a non-gender specific sense, to use guys to send them out to Afghanistan, was we were worried that they would come home and, kind of like Ektadar's redeployment, disappear into their basements, blow all the money that they've made. They wouldn't have the connection with everyone else like they do when they're on base, that sort of thing. And sure enough, we found that was in fact, we were worried it was going to happen way back from the beginning of us first sending reservists, but sure enough, it happened as I found out when I went to a Wounded Warrior event and met some of these young soldiers, and that's exactly what they did.
Just take a minute. Wounded Warriors is what?
So Wounded Warriors is an organization that is dedicated to the care of our wounded primarily. We honor the fallen, but focusing on care and programming for the wounded. And not just the individuals themselves, but also assisting the families. So it's a programming charity, which has broken great ground, and they focused their energy on the group that looked like they were initially struggling the most, which was in fact the reservists, so a quarter of those deployments. So that's how I got engaged, was by recognizing this aspect, but they do tremendous work. And so.
Stephanie, again, based on your research, finding this off switch so you're not so hyper-vigilant when you are done with your military career. How tough has it been for some members of the forces to find it?
Well, thanks to Wounded Warrior, they did sponsor a scholarship for our research institute for military and veteran health, and what allows us to it allows us to have some graduate students, postgraduate students who are doing research specifically on the rehabilitation or reintegration of reservists, because the statistics, the studies show that the isolation of the reservists after deployment can be really detrimental for their rehabilitation. So now there are studies being done on how to recognize the triggers, when they're going downhill, and how to bring them back to a place where they will find that camaraderie, where they will feel that they belong again to something. So go back to what motivated them at first.
Can I assume the research also shows, let's make a comparison here, when Vietnam vets came back to the United States and found themselves spit on and disrespected and so on, because they fought in a war that was not of their choosing, that someone told them they had to go to, as opposed to when our veterans come home and the respect for the military nowadays is just sky high. That matters, I presume.
It makes a huge difference. An institute like the one we built, which has now 34 universities, would not have existed in the 90s. Now people, researchers, civilians, they want to help, they want to know, they want to bring something on the table. They want to make a difference too. They want to be behind the troops. This never existed before. This being said, after every single war, I hear or read the same comments after Vietnam, but also after the Second World War. Korea happened. It was a relief for so many of them who could at last go back to war. And now after Afghanistan, they're wondering, what will they do with me? This is what I'm trained to do. They need to keep me busy. So the same urge to continue is there. And this is where we're talking about, that being hyper alert,
vigilant.
Sorry, and I think this hypervigilance, they need to keep it motivated, and this is where to have people like the guest here today, who are so eager to continue, and they can find a space in the society where they can continue, makes a huge difference. It helps them to have a sense, but it helps also the population to have people continue to work with them, for them, to serve.
Let me pick up on a word that I think you've all used at one point. You just used it as well, camaraderie. David, we're going to show another picture here. Okay, who's in this shot?
That's great. Two of my closest friends. On the left is Dougie Bartholomew, who I'm now the godfather to his daughter, and then Johnny Kerr in the center there. And I went to his wedding last summer in Cambridge. This was in Hausmadad. This is now in Kandahar. We had, that was a pretty punchy op. It was quite intense. I think that we went into Mullah Omar's hometown, and we had been expecting a very small insurgent group of about 5. We met many more than that.
Taliban.
Yeah. And we fortunately had Apache in the overhead, which we were able to use quite effectively. We came across, telling war stories now, aren't I? We came across a number of weapons that were being used against that Canadian base. So it was quite a big op. We also had a number of casualties on that operation too.
The thing that picture shows, though, so spectacularly, is a camaraderie that you, well, I guess I shouldn't say you can't find it in civilian life, but it seems highly unlikely that you're going to find that in civilian life, because the stakes just aren't as big. Yeah. How do you deal with that?
It's a good one. It takes a while. I came back to Canada, and all my friends, my closest friends, were in the UK. My best friend was still in Canada. My family was here, and it took a while. It was a bit of I'd say, a bumpy landing for me, to be quite honest, on my return. And one of the things that I did find was there's a network here in Toronto. There's, I think, one emerging in Ottawa, also in Vancouver, is the Treble Victor network. And not to broadcast it too much, but it's more of it was a group of people who understood me, understood my values, understood how I spoke in a place when I really didn't have a strong network. And so I think what I found really, the things that I looked for when I came back were, fortunately, I had a very strong family that was very supportive. And although I didn't have an immediate group of friends, I have, in the last couple of years, grown that. And more often than not, the majority of my friends are ex-military that are now working in the city. We have similar experiences. And it comes down to, there's that just an understanding between us. And so that camaraderie is rebuilding, but does take a while.
Iqtidar, how about you? How do you recreate that camaraderie from the battlefield?
It's difficult. It's difficult. The great thing about the military camaraderie is you go through all of these absolutely trying experiences and very dangerous experiences with each other, but at the same time you kick back and you have fun, not necessarily while you're doing it, but certainly after you're done doing it. You have things like officers' messes or non-commissioned officers' messes. Excuse me. You go to each other's weddings and things like that. So in addition to having that really rough experience with each other, you enjoy life together as well. And I think that combination is what creates that camaraderie.
General Milner, I presume you have had colleagues who have retired from the service and have told you about their experiences of trying to recreate that camaraderie in civilian life. What do you hear?
I mean, all different experiences. Matter of fact, I just joined a bunch of my comrades. It was our 30th reunion from the Royal Military College, and some have transitioned extremely well, built great friendships within their different businesses. But as the other guys have mentioned, within the forces, we're built around the team. We're put into difficult situations, combat, Bosnia, Afghanistan. So I really think you live through these difficult experiences and you become that much closer to these friends, comrades, fellow officers, NCOs. So a lot of them say that transition sometimes has been a little bit more difficult because they haven't been able to build the camaraderie as easy. But most of them have done extremely well based on their experiences from the military. So, but that camaraderie, as the other guys have mentioned, is absolutely critical in the forces, and especially when you're in some of these difficult conditions over in Afghanistan and Bosnia.
And I think the other interesting thing, and just building on what Stephanie said earlier, is that we saw, similar to after the Second World War, what you had those individuals who stayed back and served in the 2nd Battalion, which was a Defence of Canada battalion, and then the 1st Battalion guys came back after the Second World War, full of all sorts of experience. And what you had after the Second World War is you had this divide. We had the same sort of thing happen. So a divide in the mess that Iqtidar was talking about. You had those that had served and those that hadn't served. And those that had served didn't have anyone necessarily to talk to about their experiences and weren't necessarily as welcomed as the others were. And so it creates a social dynamic when the troops come back. So.
There's got to be a pecking order, right? I mean, guys who've been on the front lines, guys who've been there but not on the front lines, guys who've been trained but didn't get there, etc. Right?
Yeah, and I still regret the fact that I didn't go to Afghanistan. I had the opportunities, but a relatively small firm, it would kill the business. So one has to make those decisions, and so it's kind of like the little kid who's got his face pressed against the glass, playing the violin while all his friends are out in the street. It's that has an impact on those that stay behind.
Right. Let's play some more tape here. Again, watch the monitors here in the studio. I want to play two things. This is from a program we did a year ago, actually, with a corporal who, well, I think it'll speak for itself, and then we're going to play a film clip after that. So let's do this one first, Sheldon, if we could. Chris Dupuis, roll tape. So do you miss being in Afghanistan?
Oh yeah, yeah.
You do?
Yeah.
Did you prefer being there?
Yep. It's a constant craving from almost any soldier or service member that I've come across in my line of work. They all miss it because everything just makes sense there. Everything here doesn't make sense. It's frustrating.
Everything made sense there. Nothing here makes sense. Let's follow that up with, Sheldon, let's do this right away. I think you all remember the movie The Hurt Locker, was Best Picture of the Year, got the Academy Award, 2008. Main character, member of a bomb disposal unit, has just come home from Iraq. Roll tape. I haven't been in the military, but I know exactly how that guy feels. Presented with all those choices and you're just completely befuddled. Does that look familiar?
Very.
How so?
So I came home in 2000. Actually, when I saw that movie, I was the only person in the theater that broke out laughing. Everyone looked at me like I was a weirdo.
At that scene, you mean?
But I spent, I think an hour to an hour and a half in a grocery store my first time, walking up and down the aisles, and I think at the end of it I came out with a carton of milk and some eggs, and that's it. I just didn't know what to buy. I didn't know what to do.
Too many choices.
Too many choices, and I hadn't used those skills. I mean, I hadn't had to prepare a meal for myself in months. I'd been in Kandahar for 8 months. Prior to that, I'd had months and months of workup training with an additional month in Germany because we had just received the new tanks. We didn't have any in Canada to train with, so on top of all the time away from home training, I had to also go to Germany for about 5 weeks to just learn the button pushing of this new vehicle. I had not used any of those skills in the better part of a year and a half, and there's a lot of choice over here where there's not a lot of choice when you're in Kandahar. So,
General Milner, let me get your take on that. I mean, I don't imagine you do a heck of a lot of shopping at a supermarket when you're on leave, for example, but does any of that ring true for you?
I would say a little bit, probably not as much, but I think it's adapting. Obviously the high intensity, tempo of operations. We try and prepare soldiers for a little bit of that, and you can't, as you can well imagine, you can't prepare them for everything. It's an adjustment period. We do a little bit of, as the guys mentioned, decompression. We start to work them back into the work environment, half days. You start getting readapted back into the family. It takes time. I think the big thing is it does take time. It's a completely different environment. So, and again, I experienced some similar, maybe not as intense as that. I filled my grocery cart. So, I mean, there was things that I hadn't seen or eaten in a long time. So my wife had to slow me down because there's a lot of things I haven't seen or eaten in quite some time. But I think the key thing is that some adapt better than others as well. We try to assist soldiers with that, with a number of initiatives and programs we have, but not all adapt the same way. And that level of intensity takes quite some time, and some unfortunately never do. I don't think really come down off of that hyper intensity environment.
Stephanie, let me tap into your research again on this. Can you tell, because they demonstrate particular qualities, who will adapt better and who will adapt worse once they finish their service?
Prediction studies are always very scary because every person will react very differently. This being said, there is a lot of research being done on, I would say longitudinal research because now Afghanistan has been so many years over and then happened for so many years that we can have these studies that will show how many people need more support now. And it is, the number is quite big. We will be presenting all these research at our annual forum here in Toronto in November, but just the end of November. But basically, people like stakeholders that we spoke about, Triple Victor, Wounded Warrior, also Triple Patriot Love, they know the need and they put efforts together, the Legion, they'll put efforts together so that researchers and people who do programs and policymakers will be able to reach out to these people that we are now able to identify through the research that our researchers do in universities, Canadian universities, but also Surgeon General, Veterans Affairs Canada. So all these people work now together to find new ways, to find programs, to reach out to them and help them so that life back here can make sense for them. And this is, the number of people for whom this is a very difficult place where to be, to go from doesn't make sense to, oh, okay, now I get it, now I can choose my box of cereal or whatever. For some people, this is huge, and it takes more time, and we need to identify them before it's too late, for sure.
David, can I get you to comment on the everything over there made sense, nothing back here makes sense?
Yeah, that's a great one. And that video, that clip you showed, I can remember a similar experience. I'd actually watched the movie before I had the Walmart experience, and I was shopping, looking for something, and I suddenly glanced at my watch, and I noticed it was 12 months the day that I deployed to Afghanistan, and I was shopping for whatever, and I kind of walked out, and but more frustrated the fact that I was a cliche, rather than being frustrated with being overwhelmed. One of the things that I found when I came back was the world lacked color, and you mentioned this living, the sort of nature of that. When one's over there, one is living at a completely different, almost like a world and dimension. One's really alive. And coming back home was very much, I was going into, not simply into a realm of gray, but just a realm of shadows or shades, or it sort of lacked that vibrancy that I had when deployed.
Ektadar, how about you on that?
On the, you miss it, or?
Yeah, everything over there made sense, nothing back here makes sense. Did you have that kind of a dramatic response?
I didn't think things made sense in either environment, actually. Things back here seemed a little bit more superficial to me than they did over there. So over there, although it didn't necessarily make sense to me, at least there was some sort of logic, because it was very, very basic in its approach to life. You do this and you die, you do this and you'll survive.
So how do you deal with the people then when you're going to work and you hear somebody complaining about, oh, it's raining out today, damn it, my world's coming to an end?
My general approach is to tell people if they're not shooting at you, there's nothing to get concerned about, and we can deal with this issue. So I generally approach it as if our lives aren't in danger, then I'm not going to get stressed about it, and we'll sit down and calmly find a solution to the problem of the day.
Okay, I hear you, but you must have had some moments where you heard somebody complaining about something so completely irrelevant, and you wanted to say, "Hey, look it, Buster, I've been over there taking fire. This is nothing."
No, I try not to sermonize like that. At least I hope I succeed in not sermonizing like that. But really, I try to change the topic to something else, or politely try to extract myself from that conversation.
What do you do, Julian Chapman, when you find yourself in a situation where you hear somebody complaining about something completely irrelevant, and you know that people who've worn the uniform have had to deal with far worse?
I think probably the best example of that is me with my kids. I think it is a reality, and with a military background, life becomes very much about existence, and life becomes that much more precious. And I think what happens is that we tend to lose sight in our early-burly lifestyle of just how important that is. And I don't necessarily yell at clients or anything like that, but every now and again, it is actually a great teaching point to have a conversation with my clients about, hey, don't sweat the small stuff.
A little perspective here.
Exactly.
Stephanie, you got a story like that? Story about something dealing with that?
Well, yes, I do serve in the reserve, And as such, I'm exposed to many of the people who came back from Afghanistan, where I did not serve myself, but my peers did. And you know, when they come back, they go through a road to mental readiness. And they and when they do that, it's all color scheme, right? So when they come back, they can be in the yellow zone, in the orange zone, or the red zone. In the red zone, everything is annoying for them. And actually, most of the people are quite orangey, almost reddish, when they come back because of that hyperarousal. And it's how to give them the skills to go back to the yellowish and then the green scale, where they can live a normal life and just smile when they hear people complaining. So it is a challenge for many, many returning troops. It just takes time, though. They totally get back to normal life. But yes, this is there everywhere.
It's a skill you've got to learn, right?
Yes.
How to chill out, I guess.
Well, yes, and you have to learn it, but at the same time, as I was saying, most people who enroll have already in them coping skills and resilience skills that are quite high compared to the average of the population. So it makes it not easier, but possible.
Even in
a
combat,
success.
you can always pause, right? You can always stop the action in the sense that you can take 5 minutes to breathe and get perspective. We'd often talk about getting that the condor moment, to raise yourself above 30,000 feet, see the battlefield, and then come back down into it. And that is equally applicable anywhere you are. And to the point, I remember on my MBA, we simply said, we were going through a period, it was quite late in the night, and I simply said, guys, we've got food, we've got water, we've got, we got air conditioning, we're going to be fine, we're just going to work really, really hard. And I think it's not a question of sermonizing, as you quite rightly point out, it's more of a question of slowing the time down and getting the appropriate perspective, which comes from being in that environment.
It was similar. I mean, I recently just finished an MBA as well, and you always go through this program of this is a lot of work, and then my talk to the guys was more along the lines of this program has existed for many years, and we are not the first ones to face these challenges, so we'll be able to get through this. It just takes some work, and
That very much sounds like something you might say to the troops.
It does. I mean, but it comes back to putting things in perspective, like David said, and Stephanie said, and Julian said. So,
I want to raise 4 letters which are which we are not doing a good enough job of dealing with in this country, or anywhere for that matter, and those 4 letters are PTSD. I'm going to start with General Milner on this one. How prepared, in your experience, do you think we are in Canada to deal with the men and women who come home from the battlefield and are suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder?
Well, I can tell you right off the bat, Stephen, I think we've become a lot better. I think it's a difficult challenge to start with to really identify those that have PTSD. But the bottom line is that we're putting the mechanisms in place, the initiatives. We make sure that, we adapt the soldiers back to situations, more normalcy back at home with their units. We now have more capacity, more doctors, psychiatrists, social workers available. We try to reintegrate soldiers back into the unit, back into their families. So we give them all the tools and the capabilities that should somebody have PTSD. But it's difficult. I'll tell you. You talk to your soldiers, you try to identify those that may have it. It doesn't come out in everybody the same way. But I think we're getting better just because we offer, more professionals, more, opportunities for soldiers just to visit again hospitals and to see those people that can help them out. But I'll be honest, it's not an easy thing to identify.
Stephanie, how much progress, say over the last 10 years, have we made in this country in identifying it, diagnosing it, and treating it?
No comparison with 10 years ago, because now we do have data, evidence-based research, which makes a huge difference. This being said, is that enough? Do we know enough? no. It feels like if it is, I mean, PTSD is not the only mental health issues that the troops go through. The major one is depression, and then PTSD. You know, either one or the other will bring results that we don't want to see. We don't want no one to die after Afghanistan because of Afghanistan. But the studies show that people do develop mental health issues because of the nature of their service. And this, for me, is not alarming in the sense that what can we do, but alarming in the sense that we have to do something now, because these numbers will not go in a smaller scale with the years to come.
I want to ask the two soldiers on my right here. I'm going to ask you to do something that you guys wouldn't normally not want to do, because, of course, you're tough, macho guys being in the service, and it's uncomfortable to have to acknowledge that you may experience some kind of human frailty. So, any issues around depression? Any issues around PTSD? David, you first.
I mean, there's definitely been dark days, and I won't deny it. There were periods when I was, rather upset, and Remembrance Day is always a difficult day for me. I lost 2 of my men, and it always chokes me up, quite frankly, and I don't think that's something to be ashamed of at all. At the same time, the one thing that, talking with my friends, my peers who are ex-military or still in, one of the big things that they find frustrating at times is the caricature of the soldier who comes back and has PTSD. And I think that's one thing that a lot of people, and it's something that needs to be talked about, absolutely, and needs to be outlined, that this is an issue that we face. But Churchill had the black dog chasing after him. And this is not simply experience that soldiers simply go through. It's 1 in 5 Canadians has mental illness, is dealing with mental illness in one form or another, has. And so I think it's important, and soldiers need to be willing to articulate I think for myself, the fact that I write, I can speak, I'm able to articulate for myself my emotions, gives me a certain ability to manage it. And so it does need to be dealt with. But at the same time, the caricature always causes some consternation. I don't know.
Hector.
I view it as an injury like any other injury. Unfortunately, with an emotional or a mental or a stress injury, the signs are not readily apparent. So, for example, if one of our soldiers loses a limb, then it's very obvious, and we know what to do, and there's no shame associated with that. Similarly, there should be no shame associated with PTSD either. I think we've gotten very, very good at realizing that, but I think there might be an element of self-censure in there. So, for example, when I came home, I wasn't sleeping I didn't sleep when I was there, and I certainly wasn't sleeping when I came back. I got through it. I'm fine. I don't think I had any significant symptoms, so I wouldn't dare compare myself to somebody who's truly struggling. But I think we've gotten to a point where everyone admits it's an issue and it's a problem that needs to be dealt with, and there's no shame in it whatsoever. It's a normal reaction to an absolutely horrible and abnormal circumstance that you've been through.
Okay, let's finish up in our remaining moments on this. There are lots of misconceptions, I think, about the vets who, once they come home, how employers might regard their ability to transition into civilian life and then contribute effectively to whatever the new job is, which of course will not have death-defying aspects to it that you've just been experiencing. So, Julian Chapman, start us off on this. What are some of the misconceptions that you've heard employers may have about hiring vets?
Well, I think, it's quite interesting. If I just pull it back for a moment, I think the biggest issue is that we live in a society that has been impacted by American media and by the American War movie and the Sergeant Rock stories and all those sort of things. And I think Canadians don't understand that our military is very different. It was easy probably for David to transition over to the British Army because we have a very different approach to things. So what happens is that as CEOs get out there and they say, I want to hire ex-military and an HR person, I want you to go out and get me some ex-military because that's going to be our brand. We're going to do our bit. And that's where it stops. So there is no transition that actually occurs inside the organization for the organization as they take this individual on. Case in point, a young guy transitioned out of the regular force, had an excellent career, went into the organization. They said, we want to be all about, about leadership and accountability and these sort of things. That individual went in, did what he was told, and then they all threw up their hands and said, oh, he's too military. This guy is crazy. He thinks that we're his minions or whatever the case may be. And as a result, that was the end of his career. So the organization had to let him go because he didn't fit with the organization. I would suggest that the organization also has to fit with the individual. And when companies decide that they're going to go down this path, that they need to take that into account and they need to understand just what they're getting, because they're getting a tremendous skill set. They're getting individuals that can problem solve that no one else can deal with. Because what happens for a soldier, sailor, or airman or airwoman is that they're faced with new problems every day and they can work through that. What we tend to rely on is people's skills and knowledge. And so organizations expect a set of skills and knowledge. What you're getting someone that can take apart a complex problem and really drive to results with it.
Usually under difficult circumstances,
Exactly,
too.
yeah.
Okay.
So-
Stephanie, what does the research show about the potential mismatch between returning vets and what companies want?
The civilian population, if I may use the expression, needs to be more informed, educated about the soldiers, and they are getting more and more now exposed to soldiers' lives through media, through through the testimonies they write. They're more receptive now, but they need to know more. The life of a soldier and their soldier identity is very different from the perception that the population have of them, and this gap is still big and needs really to be reduced through education.
Dean Milner, what do you hear about returning vets and them trying to get jobs and how ready the workplace is to welcome them in?
I'd like to start off right off the bat by thanking the business community. I think the business community is doing some excellent work, taking on soldiers that are obviously looking for employment after the forces. I've got a number of different businesses that we've been working with that they're opening their arms up. So I'd like to thank them right off the bat. There's no doubt in my mind it is, in some cases, a challenge for them to understand, the skill sets that we bring. You've got a soldier that's been in combat. He's lived a different life. So how he adapts into that business world is not always going to be as easy as some others. But my experience is that I think businesses are especially here in Canada, are opening their arms up more to our soldiers. And just the connection with the forces, Canada Company, for example. So I think that you're seeing a shift towards, companies understanding, what skill sets that, those great skill sets that soldiers do bring to the civilian force.
Gotcha. David Mack, you want to add anything to that?
I mean, lots been said, and I think the notion of military literacy is something that is growing, and that's great. I mean, the concern about the Hollywood sort of hero, also the perspective of soldiers being really square and conformist, and when I look at my men, my soldiers, and my own experiences and my peers, I mean, you can't really get much more a dynamic group of people that are willing to go jump out of airplanes and wind up in bizarre places, and 72 hours be running on the ground. That sort of skill set, that sort of personality, that dynamism that comes with the soldier, and not to sell it, it's more of a question of the perception is sometimes askew.
Ektadar, any misconceptions out there?
Certainly, I think there's some misconceptions out there. Not all of them are unfounded. I mean, there's certainly a technical gap in any industry when you're transitioning from one that's as unique as the military, if you will. So there's a technical gap, and so I mean I applaud those businesses that are willing to take the risk, because they're realizing there's a technical gap, and as a result they're going to have to invest in that individual and train them and educate them on the ins and outs of their own business and how that company operates within their industry. But what they get in return is the much more difficult skills to develop, which are those leadership attributes, the discipline, the dynamism that David mentioned. And so it's really, I think some companies look at, they need to fill that role immediately, and that person needs to perform. And then if they're lacking on those other skills, then they can develop them over time. And then other companies look at the reverse approach and say, well, we can teach the technical side of things, but we want those characteristics and those capabilities that they do bring.
And they do. I want to thank all of you for really helping us out this Remembrance Week, if I can put it that way, with the third of our 3 programs here. Fascinating stuff. I really appreciate all of you joining us. Dean Milner, the Major General, via Skype, the Canadian Forces Commander, 1st Canadian Division. Thumbs up to you too, General Milner. Thanks for joining us via Skype in Kingston, Ontario. And then Julian Chapman and Stephanie Bélanger on the left-hand side of the table. David Mack and Ektadar Menachery on the right-hand side of the table. Grateful to all of you. Thank you very much.
Support Ontario's public television. Donate at tvo.org.